Good morning, good evening, probably good night, because we got attendees from all over the planet. And thank you all for joining this celebration of the NORDUnet 40 years anniversary. We have over 300 or just around 300 participants registered for this event from all over the planet. And I would like to welcome you all and thank you for joining us in this celebration. I will start off with a couple of practical details. If you ever get lost, you can always go back to the main page, 40.nordu.net, where there will be entrance so you can get back into it. If you need assistance, there's a lounge area there. If you got issues, go back there, and there are people from NORDUnet helping you out there. We will be taking questions for the keynote today and for the sessions that we have later on. And we'll be using Pigeonhole. You see the access in the just next to me, pigeonhole.at, passcode NORDUnet 40. And we will be moderating that session for assuming that we get all the questions in that people have. This is a webinar, so only the panelists or the speakers will be available or having actions to talk directly, but please ask questions if you have anything at Pigeonhole. We put together an agenda for you today. Apart from my welcome, we'll get a word from our chair of the board, Maria Häll. We will have a keynote, Stefan Hyttfors, that will talk to about disruptive times, how we cope with the speed of change. And we do have a surprise to you that will be presented to you by Erik-Jan Bos. So when we get to the end of this first hour, we will split up to two sessions, the Corona effect on online education, which will be moderated by Jon Ingi, and the session 2, which will be data intensive science connecting to the Arctic region, will be moderator Pekka Usitalo. This entire event is being recorded and will be available after it has ended at 40.nordu.net. So I will jump to my part of this introduction. 25 plus 15 is 40. In May 2005, we had our 25th years anniversary, and a lot of things has passed since then. Henry Ford once says, coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is a success. I think we can see we achieved all of those. And Nordic Collaboration is a cornerstone in realizing the full potential of the Nordic RNN community. I went back seeking inspiration for this event here and suddenly realized that either some of us has aged very rapidly or actually 15 years has transpired. And reflecting on that, and especially with one of those that are not among us anymore, in memoriam Hans Wandberg, that has been a major contributor to where we are today, both in the first 25 years, but also a significant portion of the last 15. But reflecting on what we've gone from 2015 to 2020, with the word of Bob Dylan, that times there are changing, and reflecting back on 3 very intense strategy development period where we've been looking at 3 very different period of NORDUnet's time. We've seen the rise of the content providers, and we've seen the rise of the online video conferencing and learning. And not least, over the past 9 months, we have seen the effect of the COVID pandemic and what it actually do to our community. And reflecting back on, looking back on 15 years, looking downhill and says, hey, what actually happened over those 15 years? When I took over from Peter Willemoes, we actually had a very capable Nordic network based on leased capacity. But since then, we established a Nordic and European dark fiber network infrastructure. We are on the 3rd generation of our optical infrastructure. We managed to establish lambdas both to Europe and US, and we also had, as one of the first, had a very global peering infrastructure that saved us a lot of money. We've been very active in the SHART membership. Shant is an important organization for us because working together in Europe and globally is important. But we also put a lot of energy into being active on board, active on the GA, and active on project development network infrastructure. We try to do what we say and say what we do. We try to be very prepared. We try to be very factual. Not everybody likes our approach, but I think that we have got a pretty good standing around the planet. In addition to that, we also established a global NORDUnet CEO forum together with our other partners, and that has been instrumental in looking into how does the global community work, because as a Nordic organization, we are no better than the collaborating partners we have all over the planet. We are a member of a global brotherhood that works together and delivers together, and we are highly dependent on each other. We were together with our partners key in establishing the first ANA system, interconnecting US and Europe, that coordinated both our money and the capacity we have. We were and still are supporting in the field stories. That is a place where you can look in what actually is achieved by the NORDUnet all over the planet. We are part of the global network infrastructure initiatives. And we started quite early with media service, initially actually as being internally. We quickly realized, hey, that was actually an option for others also to utilize our infrastructure. And as you see in session one, the uptake of that has been astounding, especially over the last period. We were also the founding fathers of CA1, connecting Asia to Europe, and the thinking that we've been doing in CA1 together with our partners and in ANA is now reflecting how people collaborate all over the planet. I want to mention last but not least in this perspective is that we have spent quite some time reflecting on Nordic next generation Nordic infrastructure that we are now implementing. Coming from a commercial provider, being in a situation, looking at a dark fiber that was not utilized to the fullest, and that really hurt my heart. And we are now reusing each other's infrastructure, spearheading that in the Nordic and hoping that will be an uptake. We also see that coming into Shant. We look at a federated approach for that also from type of operations, and it optimizes cost and infrastructure for everybody, making a lot more value for our end users. So with these words, and getting to the end of my time, I would like to hand over to Maria Häll, the board chair of NORDUnet, for her words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, René. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your nice words and summarize and the introduction. And I would like to say hello, everyone. And once again, very welcome to this NORDUnet 40 years anniversary celebration. And together with all of you, we want to celebrate 40 years of important and fruitful Nordic collaboration and Nordic engagement together with our European and international partners. Of course, when we started to prepare this 40 years anniversary, we of course planned for a physical event. I would have loved to meet all of you face to face, but I'm actually very happy that we managed to accomplish this event anyway in this virtual setting. And thank you, NORDUnet, for doing this. But never before has our Nordic collaboration been as important as it is right now in these very hard pandemic times. And never before our services have been of this importance as they are right now. Since mid-March, the usage of e-meeting services and distant learning have escalated in a way we have never seen before. But thanks to quick actions and thanks to our Nordic collaboration, we managed to cope with this very stressful situation. And after a rather calm summer, the usage level for the autumn is even higher, and we see no signs of this going down. And even if we know that the pandemic situation will eventually fade away, the need for our services will just keep growing. The last 1.5 years, the NORDUnet board and the NORDUnet CEO René have been working on a new strategy for NORDUnet. The focus for the future is stronger collaboration, joint commitment, and to use our joint competencies in a clever way. I think that the best way to celebrate our 40 years of fruitful collaboration is to continue to develop our community, work closer together and meet all the new challenges by finding new ways to cooperate. And there are some very important areas where we need to collaborate even closer, especially in these digitalization times. The security area is one of them. This area is quickly becoming even more essential and is very much on the political agenda. And for example, that's signals I get from the Swedish government. Almost everything we do has a security aspect on all levels, from the cables in the ground or in the sea, as well when it comes to information security. Here we really need to gather our common competencies. So now it's time to be prepared and to develop our joint way of working on equal footing. So now it's time to pool resources and competencies in new ways, and now it's time to engage even more. So collaboration really is the way forward on a Nordic level, European level, as well as wider international collaboration with our sister or brother organizations and partners. I would like to take the chance to direct the warmest thanks to you all Nordic and international contributors and collaborators. And I'm so much looking forward when we can meet face to face again. Thank you very much, all of you. I give back the floor to René. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Yes, we hope that we will be able to meet again. We made a decision that we will do that in Reykjavik in 2020 because we were quite uncertain how the next pandemic times would evolve in that sense. I would like to introduce Stefan Hyttfors because in addition to listening to us from the community, I think it was quite important to get some insights from the real world outside of that. I listened to Stefan before and he has some very good points. So I give the floor for Stefan to introduce himself and to give us a bit of introduction to how we actually can cope with the speed of change in disruptive times. Here you go, Stefan.
Thank you, René and Maria. Good morning, good evening, and good night. Was that it? I'm in Stockholm. And first and foremost, congratulations on 40 years of collaboration. So happy anniversary, so I don't forget about that. I was invited today to talk about disruptive times and why that is the new normal. I will remind you of 3 mega trends that tells us more to come. And finally, I will talk about how to cope with all of this. But let's go back. Let's start a couple of months ago, almost a year now. Remember New Year's Eve, 2020. Back then, this year was obviously nothing but future. New Year's Eve, that is the day of the year that most of us think about the future more than any other day. We sort of see it in front of us, how midnight marks the beginning of something totally new. So we set new goals and we promise to change things, change ourselves, our behaviors. So what are we thinking and how do we think about the future? Well, as you know, one common theme is more or less. More exercise, maybe more muscle, or more time with friends or hobbies, or less junk food, or less screen time, or less stress and work, things like that. Priorities. And of course, priorities are important. If you exercise instead of smoking, it will most probably affect your future. But as you know, this is just extrapolating. And the future is not so simple. It's not just an extension, more or less of what has been, of what we know. Our future is above all affected by what we don't know. It contains lots of experiences that none of us can imagine, even less expect. Think of this. What if someone at that New Year's party where you were at had said, look over there, can you see the coronavirus? No, of course you can't, because you don't know what to look for, do you? I mean, 10, 11 months ago, most of us didn't know what a coronavirus was. And even if I would have been able to give you a prediction, even if I would have been able to tell you, give you a crash course, educate you there during the fireworks, do you think you would have believed it? Well, let me tell you, this is going to be something else. I predict they will cancel the Olympics. They will close every pub in all of London. They will close down India, and you will be stuck at home in pajamas for the rest of the year. We don't think that way because we can't. We can worry for, and we can wish about things, but only about what's in our imagination. What we cannot even imagine, that doesn't fit in our thoughts about the future. I mean, you can do the opposite. You can be the future. Let's imagine time traveling was possible. So let's bring a person here from the past. I'm Swedish, so let's bring back a Viking. Now, can you please explain a smartphone to this here Viking? Remember now, he doesn't know what the internet is. He don't understand if you say things like camera or GPS. This guy don't even know what a good old telephone is. That gap, the gap between us and the Viking, the gap we go to museums to experience. That gap is obviously the same between us and future museums. And the future museum is constantly being filled. Steady stream of smartphones and coronaviruses. And when we talk about these things, we often refer to them as innovations or crises. By doing so, we judge them as good or bad. Innovation, that sounds good, doesn't it? Crisis, not so much. But I want you to think of these events as decisive moments, to remind you that they are not good or bad per definition. Decisive moments mean just one thing: it will never be the same again. When you know what a smartphone is or what a coronavirus is, you cannot unlearn it. In the future museum, this is the exciting place. This is where you stop and have a look. Your great-grandchildren, you know, they will look at Steve Jobs when he introduced the first iPhone in 2007, and then they will be fascinated by Elon Musk with the first Tesla electric car back in 2008, and then there's nothing for more than 10 years. The economy is growing. We do what we did yesterday. The stock market is up. Everything is, I mean, the only thing interesting is this Donald Trump character. Besides that, just boring. And then boom, 2020, the year of the corona pandemic. Wow, this is an exciting part of the museum. A new normal, not good or bad. A new normal just means the old normal will never again be normal. So we need to stop talking about the world after COVID-19. And we need to think more about the world with COVID-19. Now, in this world with COVID-19, yeah, sure, it's fair to say that everything has changed since back New Year, but at the same time, that means nothing has changed. I mean, we were talking about this, the increased speed of change and disruption for so long now. Where I was, it was always the story of tech disruption. We were talking about digitalization, robots, self-driving cars, artificial intelligence, not a virus. But here we are. And just like with any other decisive moment in history, yes, of course, there is a lot of suffering. Many are losing and many more will lose a lot. So we need to show a lot of empathy and support, of course. But the fact that many are losing also means new winners, new opportunities. And this is why we need to think of decisive moments without judging. A new normal, again, is not bad or good per definition. It just means the old normal will never again be normal. And you have done, I mean, you can think of other disruptive, decisive moments in your life. You've done it, you've been through this before. Remember 9/11 or the financial crisis 12 years ago, or the internet. I mean, just think of the fact that there was a world before the internet, and now there's a world with the internet. Think of all the opportunities we have today due to the fact that we are living in a world with the internet. And then think of all the problems, jobs lost, bankrupted companies, industries struggling because we are living in a world with the internet. There's always the obvious, the quite easy to spot opportunities. I refer to them as umbrellas. Think of umbrellas when it's raining, quite easy to predict that the interest and sales will go up. And now there is a growing market, growing interest for for things like this, designer face masks, or digital tools for meetings and communication, like this thing we're doing right now, e-commerce, everything that can help us in a world where we need physical distance. So these are the easy to spot opportunities, umbrellas on a rainy day. But then there are the not so easy to spot opportunities. I mean, long-term change on a societal level, to the way we live our life. Maybe the transformation from office workers to out of office workers is just as profound as the transformation from farmers to industrial workers. Remote work, maybe this opportunity is something much bigger than just getting a smaller office space. Maybe the real opportunity in a world where we can be out of office is about gender balance. Think about it. So many women still have to make a choice between a professional life and family life. But now if we can all work from home or anywhere, then managers have to learn how to measure employees by results rather than just from how many hours they spend in the office. Then maybe no one have to make that choice anymore. And again, this is not a prediction. This is opportunities. Right now, students, entrepreneurs, people out there, spot opportunities like this and act. Remember that behind every bankrupted company, behind every closed storefront, there is a vacuum waiting to be filled. Decisive moments are exciting moments. Andy Grove, one of the founders of Intel, he once famously said, bad companies are destroyed by a crisis. Good companies survive a crisis. Great companies are defined by a crisis. To me, I believe this is very true on the individual level as well. You can be defined by a crisis. This is where you shine. It is true when they say that COVID-19 took us straight to 2030. One consequence of this pandemic is that much of what would have happened the coming 10 years now happened in just one. First, and obviously, if you think of the virus, the old and already sick are suffering more than the young and healthy. Same thing in business. Weak companies, the ones stuck in old business models who probably would have died out in the coming 10 years or so, now do so in a faster pace. And again, our use of digital tools, the umbrellas I told you about, I mean, all of this, we were jumping online the coming 10 years anyway. And now COVID-19 took us straight to 2030. But it is also true to describe this pandemic as life put on hold. Many have experienced the spring and now the fall as life in slow motion. All of a sudden, we've had time. And time, you know, that's the thing we never used to have. But now we had time to think and reflect and time to decide what's important and what's not. No matter what you think about this year, at least it reminded us of one very important thing. We cannot predict the future. No one can. I mean, we were all wrong. We didn't even have paper face masks for doctors. And this is an important reminder when we talk about the future. Sounds like a cliche, but the future is, of course, not to be predicted. It is to be created. Successful's never about predictions. Successful people, successful companies, the ones we talk about all the time, Google, Amazon, Tesla, you know, they are not successful because someone was good at guessing. The reason they are successful is because of a true understanding of the now. What problems need to be solved now? What opportunities are there now? So when you think about the future, you should pay attention to this present moment. And again, I know this sounds like a no-brainer, but think about it. Look around. Automobile companies making hundreds of thousands of fossil fuel cars still. The food industry give us unhealthy food that makes us sick. Retailers, like in clothing, are totally unsustainable, using resources and polluting in a totally unsustainable way. We are in this moment where we learn that the old solutions doesn't work. It's quite obvious if you think of it. I mean, you can think of it like this. Here is human progress. or rather thousands of years of no progress. You can see GDP growth. For thousands of years, nothing happened. And then in just 200-300 years, we got it all. Economic growth. This is the reason that we today can create more human well-being in 1 week than that poor Viking could in his whole lifetime. But again, if you focus on the now, today's problem, if we add this graph on top of it, CO2 emissions, it's quite clear that the way we created this fortune is by burning fossil fuels. And we now know that that doesn't work. That solution is not working anymore if we want more human well-being, more economic growth. So this is examples of ignoring today's problems and opportunities. So again, turn your attention to the now. And then no matter what you think of it, let's face this current situation with acceptance. Because only when you accept can you go on and have the mindset of a student. Then when you accept the situation, you can start to study it curiously to understand. And then you can start to think of action. What needs to be done? That's how the future is born. Not to be predicted, it is to be created. You probably heard what they say about this year. Depending on your action, you can come out of this year a hunk, a monk, or a drunk. In the bigger picture, our time is defined by an increased speed of change. And that's why I said our future is not so simple. It's not just more or less of what we know, what we have experience of. Our future is defined by what we don't know. As you know, life used to be in 2 phases. First, you study. First, you go to school. And then eventually you're done. You're ready to move on. You get a diploma. Ready for the second phase, capitalization, time to work and make money. You know that's not true anymore. You will need to keep exploring and educating as a continuous phase for the rest of your life. This is the age of education and exploration, research. We need to learn new. So we shouldn't talk about change in general, but we should focus on speed. A virus or any kind of health problem is a great example of this. I mean, of course, we would not have a problem with the coronavirus if it spread slowly. Just like we would act faster to combat climate change if the impact of it was faster. So slow change can be as dangerous as fast change, but change in itself is never the problem. Speed is. And of course, if the speed is increasing, that now, the present moment I told you to focus on, it's a moving target. But there are 3 solid foundations for an increased speed of change, underlying trends, mega trends that tells us that we can expect much more of these decisive moments, hopefully not pandemics, but more disruptive change. The first one, obviously, is nature. Nature says we must change, adapt. And this pandemic is a great example of how small we are when nature demands change. The coronavirus is 10,000 times the size of a grain of salt. And look at us, we had to close the world. Now think of climate change. According to IPCC, this year, everything we have done is a walk in the park compared to what nature will demand in the coming decades. And remember, this is not a question about how to save the planet. Planet Earth will be around for at least 1 billion years. This is about us. For how long are we going to be on this planet? And how will that future look like? Up until now, our ecosystems, nature, animals have struggled hard to survive human beings. And now there are so many trends telling us that we have passed tipping points. So from now on, it's fair to assume that human beings will struggle to cope with nature. The second reason for disruptive change is attitudes. Maybe you remember the Greatest Generation. You read about it maybe. The Greatest Generation, that's men and women who grew up in the beginning of the 20th century, grew up during the World Wars and the Depression years. It's a term from the book by American journalist Tom Brokaw. And he wrote like this: these men and women fought not for fame and recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. And maybe that is exactly what we see once again. Now we see a backlash to the attention-seeking Instagram generation of hyper-consumers who fight only for fame and recognition. So now we see a backlash from the greatest generation to Greta's generation. And there is so much, obviously you know this generation, but there is so much to study about this generation. And one of the interesting aspects is the size of it. Today, currently 32% of the world population is born in the 21st century. So this is the new boomer generation. And Generation Z won't change. So we must change, we won't change. And number three, the third mega trend, of course, is technology. With technology, we can change. We can do things today that weren't possible just yesterday. The backdrop here is the operating system of a self-driving Tesla. And this is fascinating, but it's also a little bit scary, don't you think? Can we really trust in a machine to drive the car? And just when you ask that question, another one is obvious. I mean, this is not what I see when I drive. I don't do all this. I don't have control. Can we really trust a human to be able to drive the car? You know how we've been talking about digitalization, how everything should have an E as in electronic, have email, e-books, e-commerce. Well, right now the tech companies are on the move again from E to A as in automated. So e-commerce is transforming into a-commerce. Algorithms who know you better than you know yourself, and then work 24/7, not only to give you the best offers, but to predict your future desires, because we are easy to predict. And then when the algorithm understands you, they can adjust those predictions to adjust everything in the back end. So the online store will tell you what to buy before you even knew you wanted it. And then delivery will be waiting outside your door, just waiting for you to understand. Just click that buy button to confirm. I'm outside now right now. Need to do this delivery. This is what they mean when they say data is the new oil. We are entering a world where everything, everyone is connected. And then on top of connectivity, we will have technologies like emotion AI, emotion artificial intelligence. It doesn't mean that technology will be emotional. I mean, you don't have to worry about road raging, self-driving cars, stuff like that. Emotion AI means technology will start to understand your emotions. So in 2 years' time or so, your device, I mean, things like your phone or your watch or your glasses maybe, will have emotion AI capabilities. So your device will know if you are sad or angry or scared or happy or excited. You will quit your jobs because your watch tells you it's time. Look here, every Monday morning, this is what happens. I will lose 5 years of my life if I don't leave this boss or this work or this place or this relationship. The health tech revolution is about information from our inside, not just the outside anymore. Technologies that can help us to understand more about our physical and mental health. And those technologies will connect all the dots of our lifestyle to give us more knowledge about how we are and why. And the price we will pay for the promise of perfect knowledge of our health, of course, is privacy. The insurance company, the bank, all these companies, they will also know you better. And when I say that, I don't mean the people at the bank. E to A, remember, the bank is also run by algorithms. If the bank decides to turn down your loan application, there is no one working at the bank who will be able to tell you why. That decision will be based on millions of data points compared to millions of customers' data points. It's way too complex for any human being. That's it. The future contains a steady stream of decisive moments and disruptive change. That means the old normal will never again be normal, because nature says we must change. Next generation says we won't change. And technology makes it possible. We can. And in just a couple of weeks, we are back again watching the fireworks, some kind of physical distancing party. Yes, many of us will be like millions of Americans 3 weeks or so ago. We will probably celebrate the end of something rather than looking forward. But you will celebrate the new year, 2021. And the only thing we know about it is this: 2021 will also bring change. And you will adapt like you always do. But for the future to be inspiring, you need more than the ability to adapt. If you want to know how to cope with the speed of change, if you want to have a great vision about the future, you need to make one that isn't about some thing you wish for. Make a vision about your relationship to uncertainty. You need to learn how to enjoy uncertainty. Isn't that what education and research is all about? To enjoy the fact that we don't know yet? When you wake up in the morning and you think of how uncertainty is the only certainty, and then you feel joy and excitement just because of that. Wow, we are alive in extraordinary times of excitement, adventure, change, exploration. So much to learn still ahead of us. We all need to adapt the mindset of students. When that's your feeling, then you should celebrate. Because the ones who learn to enjoy uncertainty, those are the ones who will love our future. I wish you the best of luck, and I hope I gave you some new thoughts. And with that, I say thank you for listening, and back to René.
Thank you, Stefan. We will take questions to Stefan at Pigeonhole, so that if you have any questions, please ask them. I already received a couple of questions during this period or during this speech. So what do you think, Stefan, will motivate people and organizations to embrace a rapid pace of change instead of fighting it?
Trust. To me, that's the obvious answer. It doesn't matter now if we think of a nation or a corporation or a school or a sports team or any kind of group of people or the individual level. If you can create a culture of trust, I truly believe that we all love to explore and learn new things. So I don't agree when we say that people don't want change. The problem is that we're often driven by fear because we lack trust. So as long as we feel safe and looked after, as long as we have a relationship where there is trust, I think you have a very solid foundation for embracing change.
Thank you, Stefan. I'm looking for the next questions. I think in this period where all of us suddenly had to change our daily life and not actually knowing where things were going. I think when we started this COVID working at home, people says, well, it'll be over by summer. Then people said, well, it'll be over by autumn. And now we say, well, it might be over next year. So how do you learn to enjoy uncertainty?
The best way for me to describe, and again, I'm not saying this is easy. I'm constantly working on this, but I truly believe that you need to get to know yourself better. I mean, really know yourself. It's only when you trust in your own ability, so you feel safe, then you can start to make others feel safe enough too, and to create that trust. So you need to learn to look at yourself like if you were looking at another person, to truly study yourself and know yourself well enough to understand that maybe you start to realize that you shouldn't always believe in your own thoughts. Why am I scared right now? Why am I angry right now? Or why am I happy right? You know, if you can do that, if you can step out of yourself and study yourself to get to know yourself good enough to realize that permanence is just an illusion and you have nothing but time. There are so many obvious realizations. For me, I practice meditation, but you can do anything that works for you. Maybe take long walks in the forest, or as long as it brings awareness. Because when you wake up to all the knowledge that you might not even have reflected upon about yourself, then you feel calm. And then when you feel calm, you can start to create that culture of trust.
I'll jump to the one other question from Cees de Laat saying, I'm a master of my physical car, my physical house, etc. How will I be a master of my digital car, digital house? And how do we maintain integrity and sovereignty?
Well, I want to go back to my last reply here, but because are we really masters? I mean, yes, we are masters of everything in the outside world, like that question, you know, the car, the workspace, all these things. We have, for thousands of years, we have mastered the outside world, the facade, my car, my job, my clothes, my everything. But still, according to the World Health Organization, if we look above this year and the pandemic, the biggest health problem of the future is mental disorder. So we haven't started yet the inward, the journey to master our inside. So what if wealth and human well-being in the next 100 years is not about the outside anymore, but rather about how to feel good on the inside? And isn't that great then that you have a car that takes care of commuting and driving, so you don't need to be angry? I mean, I'm in Stockholm. It's a terrible situation to drive in the rush hour traffic in the morning. It would be lovely if the car could do that, and yeah, I could just meditate instead to know myself better. So again, I think it's a profound mind shift here, that now we can start to learn more about our insights and what truly makes ourselves happy. And I think Generation Z, like I talked about, I think that they already understand this because they grew up in a world where we have pretty much everything except happiness. So they will be more focused on the inside.
I think this COVID time definitively pushing us to rethink how our interpersonality relations are in that sense, because we suddenly be forced in a different direction. Erik Häuser came up with another questions. As you explained, algorithm will start to dominate decisions. How can we build that trust if we don't understand the algorithms?
Yeah, I think this is a very important question, and one that we need to talk so much more about. And unfortunately, I think we are right now in this time where we don't talk about integrity, net neutrality, and who should be, in ownership, in possession of all this data. We need to talk. These are serious questions that will, depending, like the climate situation, depending on what we decide now, in the coming 10 years, we will probably never be able to go back. It will be a new normal. So it's very important that we address these questions more. Who should own the knowledge of my emotional health, for instance? Why would I be able to trust an algorithm if they are using it just to make money of me? Things like that. And so far, we are not talking about this almost at all. I mean, politicians and the situation we have in society today is very polarized, and it's a kind of backward-looking discussion on between, I mean, not like it used to be between right and left anymore, but rather between the people who want to go forward and the ones who want to go back to something, the way it used to be. So we need to hopefully start to realize as many as possible and talk about these challenges, because I agree, I don't have an answer here today, but I believe that the ability to trust in these algorithms and all the choices we make the coming 10 years or so will be very important for all future generations. So we need to address these questions much more.
Thank you, Stefan. We got another question from Mohammed Tarid from Bidiren. He says, do you think that COVID is a blessing for NRENs and humanity to flourish?
First of all, I need to be very clear. I mean, there is a lot of suffering. And like I said, we need to have a lot of empathy for all the ones who suffer. But in the long term, I think it's probably good that we at least have a reminder that this is how small we are. Like I said, we can't do pretty much anything if the nature changes the rules. And it doesn't necessarily always, going to be about technology, but it can be things like this. And it's also good, I think, from a perspective that we're to teach people in this age, in this era, that life as we got used to it is not something to take for granted. It's very vulnerable. Society can change rapidly depending on the decisions we make here now. So, to have some time to reflect on these big things, yes, from that perspective, I think it might even be a good blessing, because we know one thing for sure, and that is that, like I told you, business as usual wasn't working. And the only way to stop business as usual is obviously some event like this, rather than, you know, we are not mature enough to put a stop to it ourselves. So from that perspective, yes, besides from all the suffering, in 10 years time, when we look back, we will probably think of this 2020 as a very valuable year.
I think there's a key turning point here. If you look at the big steps we've seen in human evolution, it's always happened when there were an evolutionary pressure on us. And I think COVID, like some wars and other events, has been putting pressure on us as human beings to evolve. And in that sense, despite the suffering, despite the too many people dying around the planet, I think it actually will benefit us in the long run, trying to make us think in a different way. We are just so lucky that COVID is not Ebola with the same degree of spread, because then we would have a total different issue. Another question from Anya. What might happen to human relations when our appliances equipped in artificial intelligence start knowing and understanding us better than our spouses or even ourselves?
Well, I don't know. It's like again, trying to predict the outcome of this. Like I said, there are the umbrellas, the obvious things that we can automate some things in our relations, and then there are the profound changes to the way we live our life. And I don't know. What I do think again is that it's not always, we need to learn something from the last 20 years. We had a tech revolution with the internet and with all the wearable devices that we can carry the whole world of information in our pockets. So one of the examples, of course, is how do we meet other human beings? Well, now we can meet each other online, and in theory it sounds like that's perfect, because then I can make my profile to perfectly match me with another profile that is exactly the kind of person I need. But in the end, we see that doesn't work out all the time. So we need to be humble about the fact that if technology can be there to help us understand ourselves better, if I have a watch that tells me that, no, you don't need to worry about eating fat. You need to worry about how much time you spend outdoors, or how much you sleep, or because you get depressed when, if the technology connect all the dots and teach me how to live a better life. So then maybe I can rise and become a stronger human being and happier human being. And then I think, and I hope that we will not confuse that, so that in the end we are social animals. And that will not change, not even due to a pandemic. We have seen that in history. So social animals love to meet and need to meet. And in the end, when technology have all this knowledge about us, we will be better, I think. We will remember the 2020s as an immature time. We will be focused on how to do digital detox, how to have true meetings, how to sit down without any technology to actually communicate as human beings and social animals. But we will probably be better at that kind of communication, because technology will have helped me to understand myself better. So again, there is a great vision for a fantastic future when technology is there to help us. But then, of course, there is the dystopic vision where technology takes over everything. And that's why I said it's not to be predicted, it is to be created. So we need to focus on what do we want to create, and how do we legislate, and how do we take charge of all that data to be able to trust in technology as an enabler rather than as a terminator.
And I think that gets to one of the other questions that from an anonymous viewer that says, when the algorithms are clever enough, at what point are we wrong and we don't behave as predicted? That's a bit the Skynet scenario.
Yeah. But again, I mean, like I said, it's never a question, or very rarely a question, about right or wrong. When you are arguing with your partner and you feel that she or he is wrong, I mean, then again, this is an example about you need to know yourself. First, you need to ask yourself, why is that important? Who is right or wrong? Can we try to understand each other and meet instead of just try to decide who is right or wrong? Because again, this is what we see in society, in the polarized society. Same thing with technology. Technology is not good or bad. It's not right or wrong. If a self-driving car is 1,000 times safer than a human driver, it doesn't mean that it's always right. It will sometimes probably create problems and accidents. So it's not black or white, right or wrong. It's an enabler. And I think just like we have so much technology in our society today that helps us to live life in a way that Viking would never have been able to. I mean, the poor Viking would have died of shock of just coming here. All this enabled our lifestyle. And same thing in the future. If we have technology that enables so much more human well-being, then why not dig into that and use that? Again, I think a lot of these dystopic visions are driven by fear rather than seeing opportunities, and then always trying to decide if this is good or bad. And we shouldn't do that. We should think of it as, well, a lot of new normals, a lot of decisive moments, a lot of new things to explore and study and educate ourselves about.
Thank you for that, Stefan. We have a couple of more questions, but we will send that to you and we will put them online because the allocated time is a bit out right now. But we will be sure that all the questions will be answered and put online. I thank you very much for your participation. I think it was a great input and better food for thought. Thank you for that. Looking forward to speak with you again. I will rapidly pass on to the next portion of today. We are going to look a little bit of surprise that has been created for us. Oh, sorry, wrong, my bad. I will hand the word to Erik-Jan to introduce a surprise to us. We wanted to celebrate the 40 years of NORDUnet with a collaborative effort. And here I give the word to Erik-Jan to show us what our little surprise is about.
Thank you very much, René. Let me get set up here. All right. Good day, everyone. Welcome to the last talk in the plenary session. This item is announced as a surprise, and also the agenda revealed that it is about 40 years of Nordic collaboration, and I should add 40 years of Nordic NREN collaboration, of course. And I do also realize it is hard to fill the slot right after the keynote speaker, but here we go. I want to take you down to memory lane for a short while and take you back to the year 1980. And René already said that at the beginning, the year that NORDUnet was born. Just to set the scene, the year 1980 was the year in which this lady, Miss Vigdís Finnbogadóttir, became president of Iceland. And she was the world's first democratically elected female president. Also in this year, the Pac-Man arcade game launched, and Ronald Reagan was elected president of the USA. Quite an interesting topic at this moment. Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, was launched worldwide. And to be more in technology, the Ethernet 2 frame, or also known as the DIX frame, everybody uses this, was standardized and published. Post-it notes started selling in the year 1980, and the world's first 24 hours news network channel, CNN, was launched. And we all know this gentleman and what it did to the internet. Tim Berners-Lee, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, he begins to work on what he called Enquire, the system that eventually will lead to the World Wide Web in the autumn of 1990. And also, in this year, NORDUnet was born by visionaries who started to work together in the Nordic countries, and this vision was taken further into a project by the Nordic Council of Ministers. René, in one of his opening slides, had 25 plus 15 is 40. It was the year 2005, when NORDUnet turned 25, that we published The History of NORDUnet. This book, written by Carina Letisalo. Some of you will have this in the bookshelf. Some of you will even have read it. And this is the book about 25 years of networking cooperation in the Nordic countries. And now we are 15 years ahead, and we are in the year 2020. And NORDUnet again created a publication. This is the front page of it. It's not a paper thing. It's not a thing you can put on your bookshelf. It talks about the power of Nordic unity. And the subtitle is 40 years of NORDUnet, or 40 years of Nordic NREN collaboration. And this time we created a multi-touch digital journey. It's an electronic book. It contains 7 chapters. It's about NORDUnet. It's about the Nordic NRENs. It is about our Nordic collaboration, but also about the European engagement from the Nordics and the Nordics in the larger ecosystem of the global research and education network, the GREN. The publication of this book, the production of this book was remarkable. Due to the pandemic, the journalist, who is from Denmark, and the editor-in-chief of this electronic publication, and that's me, said the dog, never met in person with the most important persons who made this publication happen. The designer, the graphical interface designer, she is based in Canada. The media coordinator, he's based in Italy. And we created an ePub out of this, and this ePub converter is based in the Netherlands. And thanks to countless Zoom meetings, I tried to count them, but I gave up. I'm happy to say that we were able to make this happen, complete and in time. As editor-in-chief, I'm very grateful to my team for that. And now I'd like you to sit back and relax for a 1-minute video, the trailer of the electronic book. All right, thank you. You can get your own copy of this electronic publication right after this event. You can go to 40.nordu.net. You've probably been there already. Don't go there now because it will only be available after this event, right after this event. And you can download it as an iBook. So that works pretty well on Apple devices. You can download it as an ePub 3 for Windows and Android devices. And there's also a PDF, so you can print it if you want, but that is not advised. And with that, I'd like to end the little surprise, and I advise you to download it, and happy reading. And with that, I'd like to give the floor back to René.
Thank you, Erik-Jan. To give you a bit of view what actually has been behind that. When we set out for the journey of doing the 40 years anniversary, we really wanted to do something different. And I also want to be sure that to give the credit to the right people here. And I'll put myself a bit down in the corner and show you who actually contributed to this. These are the people, and thank you to all of them for contributing content. A lot of people all over the world, the communications department at our Nordic NRENs, the NORDUnet board, the NORDUnet staff has participated in this. There's all the contributing individuals and organizations, and thank to everybody for this. This has been a massive endeavor, These are the people who's been contributing, getting things together, doing the testing, both NORDUnet staff, people from our friendly environs, the NORDUnet board, Maria, Tom, Pekka, Steen, and Jo Ingi. And not at least a big thank to Erik-Jan Bos, because this has been a major endeavor getting this together. I hope that you will enjoy the publication and explore the corners of that. With that, I want to do the credits for the event, because we actually put a lot of energy into the event. These are the people who has been contributing to get the event together. It's been quite some work over the last couple of months when we realized that we could not do a physical event, but we had to do a virtual event instead of. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to the idea and content providers, the graphical designs, event technical, the social media people, the one who did our webpage, the invitations, and not at least our moderators and speakers today. With this end, I would like to thank you all for participating in this and ask you to go to the sessions. You can either, probably the most easy one is to go back to 40.NORDUnet and click on the link for the 2 sessions you want to join. We put the sessions together in a way that would highlight what actually happened with Corona. What does that mean? What did that mean for our community? Not just from a technical point of view, but also from a teacher point of view. And then we had a look at what do these large scale data sciences also mean to the Arctic region. Please enjoy the sessions, and thank you very much for participating today.